Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Juan Cotto touching bases with you from the historic Columbus Association on WIAA Primetime, your Tuesday afternoon discussion of the issues going on in athletics throughout Washington State high schools. And it is pomp and circumstance time in Washington State. Children are graduating all over the state of Washington to pursue opportunities in higher education, and many of them will take their place in society. And many of them had participated in athletics, and the leadership skills that they developed, they will be impacting our community and regions for decades to come. Mick, welcome. Great to see you.
Good to be back.
So good to have you back. Mick, how would you characterize your year as the director of athletics in Washington State and activities in Washington State? How do you measure yourself, and what types of things do you think are the high points, and where do you think that you would like to see yourself and the organization improve over the next year?
Yeah, I would say it was a great year. It was a very busy year. It was a good busy. Attendance was up for the most part. Most sports we were down in a few, but overall attendance was up. So people are coming out and enjoying the opportunity to watch kids play. Our participation numbers, early numbers coming in, appear to be good. That kids are getting out. So like we're getting back to whatever this new normal is. So for us, that's fantastic. Areas of opportunity. I think we keep making, we were so worried. Last year we still had COVID protocols, and this year we're back to running events, and we're a little rusty in some areas. And so, next year's a chance to really make our events and experiences for fans. So I think that's a real opportunity. And the other piece is do a better job marketing our events throughout the year so people aren't surprised when regional and state and district tournaments are coming up. So,
Mick, where I live down in Leschi, we could see the Lake Washington floating bridge in the morning. And I'll tell you, prior to 2020, there was always traffic jams coming from the east side, coming back into Seattle. And then for about a 3-year period, we saw nothing in the morning.
Yeah.
You wouldn't see the traffic. You wouldn't see any traffic jams. You wouldn't see all these long backups. And then on Monday morning, I realized I hadn't noticed it for a while. There was a backup on I-90, man. Yeah. And this has gone on for several months now. It just kind of returned back to my conscious. It is starting to get back to normal, whatever normal is, whatever normal was in terms of how we defined that before the pandemic. Tell us, in regards to high school athletics from your perspective, and what you all have had to go through with the unbelievable shift. How are things starting to return to normal for you?
I would say some of the concerns that are brought to us now are more around general competitiveness. People either thinking somebody's getting an advantage or disadvantage, or being left out. That it's too difficult for them to compete in a certain sport or certain level for a variety of reasons. It's not around the belief that anyone's trying to intentionally harm students by not letting them play, and those kinds of things. So we're getting out of a little bit of that political mumble jumble that was putting that big shadow on everything we're doing, and we're getting back to the typical things around competition. People want to win. They don't want to lose. I think there's still a fair amount of true appreciation for just getting the opportunity to compete and the benefits that come from that. So, more of what I had been told we would be dealing with when I came into this job. And 4 years later, we're starting to see a little bit more of it.
You replaced Mike Colbreeze, who in the state of Washington we all knew, and he what a wonderful man, what a wonderful character, and certainly his impact and his legacy on high school athletics and on people. And he also was on Rainier Avenue Radio, and we had many conversations about that. You have taken over for him, and you have brought your own special personality. You have brought your own special and unique talents to this position. This is the start. This will be the start of year number 4 for you.
5
number 5 coming up, and obviously, Mike never had to deal with the pandemic. Tell us what are the biggest things, or what are some of the things that you have learned since you took over this position 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's surprising to me how different schools within even the same region do things, and the expectations and wants and needs out of their athletic and activity programs. And so you deal with a very diverse in wants and needs, in addition to just the diversity of the communities, which I love that. I'm a formal social studies teacher. I think it's great. I love putting together puzzles and doing those kinds of things. And so for us, trying to meet these expectations and wants and needs from all around the state is a real challenge, but it's incredibly rewarding when you start to get some things right.
He is Mick Hoffman. He is the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. He so graciously comes down here, not too far from his headquarters in Renton. However, he is a man who goes all over the state of Washington in his truck and visits. Has a nice truck, by the way. He goes out and he visits folks. He visits the districts to see what is going on, to have a pulse in our community. Comes with and visits with us on Rainier Avenue Radio every Tuesday at 3:00. And we are so appreciative of him come to do that. And we have these conversations about athletics here in the state of Washington. Mick, what is the role of high school athletics? And as a parent who now has gone through this, as I just say, in my role as a parent, now with a child who's participating in select athletics. My son's playing select baseball, and to see the select teams and the role that he participates on those teams, to see the role in his high school team, and there are still critics of athletics. Don't believe that it should be involved in the education space. I vehemently disagree with that. I see education and athletics as co-curricular, and I always tell my mom an artificial environment which allows our kids to learn these lessons. But and I think you and I are philosophically on the same page here as I ask you this. But what do you see as the role of high school athletics? And Mick, also tell us, why won't it go away?
I think first and foremost, it helps keep students connected to their education. And we, going back to the pandemic, as we were starting to see the light of day to get out of that dark hole, we started having superintendents who were opposed to some information we put out early on, a letter I wrote and sent out in that first December about how critical it was to get back to playing. And they started calling and saying, hey, students aren't showing up. And I'm a former educator. I feel like I'm still an educator in this role. And what we offer is something that's fun, that students want to do. So it's an intrinsic and extrinsic motivator for students to get it done in chemistry class and show up to first period in the morning. And once we get them through that critical development stage and they're graduating, like what we're seeing all around the state now, and they go out to the world, not only do they have that magical piece of paper in their hand that opens up so many doors in our society, but they also have all those lessons that, and if they were blessed to have a coach who was very intentional with this, that translates to those soft skills that we see lacking in a lot of the stuff that we see on news. Dave Ticker, who runs our Athletic Director Association, he has a great line. He goes, we give students the opportunity to learn how to work it out rather than fight it out. And our society could use a lot of that right now.
Is there a way that we have been able to measure the impact that athletics and participation activities has had on the mental health of our children who suffered so much of the mental health challenges during the pandemic?
The University of Wisconsin is doing a lot of that research right now. And early on in the pandemic, they had some surveys and preliminary showing this extreme increase in depression and other social emotional issues. They have not completed that now post-COVID, so we're waiting for those results, because honestly, we use that when we're going out talking to superintendents, school directors, why it's an investment in education-based activities. It's not an expense. And at the same time, the superintendents turn around and use that same kind of data and information when they go out to their communities and they say, hey, vote for this levy, because any funding that's going towards athletics is coming out of these levy dollars. So that extra 10% you provide our budget provides these opportunities, and here's what you're getting for your return on investment.
With the announcement last week of the WIAA football championships going to Husky Stadium, which you heard first. You heard some of the first interviews on that here on Rainier Avenue Radio.world with the WIAA Primetime. And the excitement that goes along with that, because obviously it's great to be back in Seattle for those of us that are here, and also at the University of Washington, connecting with one of the major academic institutions, not only in the state, but to brag in the Western Hemisphere. What does this mean for the other opportunities for sports outside of football? Is there going to be opportunities for the basketball tournament maybe to be moved to locations? Are the baseball tournaments, which were in Everett this year, which was a shift, but are we going to be looking at opportunities to move some of those events? Or is this just a one where we're going to test at the University of Washington and we're going to see how things go?
Yeah, so we're going out to bid this summer for every sport for a 4-year period starting in the fall of 2024. So it's really going to be dependent on, what kind of numbers do we get. So in football right now with our current attendance, this might only be a 1-year deal. If the venue and the sport draws that level of interest and it can be self-sustaining, because in reality, a sport like football or a sport like basketball, track and field, it generates revenue that pays for those non-revenue sports. And so, we're open to anything and everything that is a sustainable model. Just this morning, we had the Tacoma Dome folks in the office talking about this very topic, about what we can do to work with their community. We know Spokane has told us we bring in $5 million of economic impact for the B tournament. So we're asking them to help us, which they did this last year, defray some of the costs with bringing that tournament there. We've talked about Yakima quite a bit. It's almost $17 million of economic impact for the WI events that are hosted there. So we know with what has been hosted traditionally in Tacoma, there's value to that community. So, if communities that have that, whether it's Seattle with Lumen or T-Mobile or the Wazoo and Pullman, if they're willing to work with us and make this a community-based event, that's where we want to be.
Let's drill down deeper into that, because this is a conversation we always hear it at the macro level when we're hearing about professional sports, and the citizens who argue against athletics talk about these numbers and then sometimes quote unquote being exaggerated by professional sports teams, although the economic development, it runs so many different levels down in terms of the maturity of your city in a lot of different cases, and what the Chamber of Commerce and what people are doing to, if you have a National Basketball Association franchise, or if you have a Major League franchise or an NFL franchise in your city, and obviously in Seattle we have that. And that, for a lot of people, is the foundation of how Seattle really got its name throughout the community. So I don't think there's any argument with that. But some people would. But for folks who look at the bottom line in terms of revenue, and you look at a small business owner who has a restaurant, you look at a small business owner who runs a hotel, an independent hotel. Those dollars are real in terms of the people who come and spend up to 3 to 4 days in those communities at those events. And tell us a little bit about the business angle of the WIAA.
Yeah, and so that's where we're going out and talking to the sports commissions, the chambers, the councils, to say, hey, you have a concert at Climate Pledge. Climate Pledge is going to make quite a bit of money with their alcohol sales, right? And that's one of the things that we don't allow. So for the big venues hosting us, it's really more of a community giveaway of an asset, because they're not generating as much revenue. They're not selling tickets for $200 or $300 with high fees on them. But our people are coming for 2, 3, 4 days at a time. So the hotel, you may come in and out one night, maybe for a concert, maybe you don't even get you're in and out. So the venue makes more, but it's all those businesses around there that really benefit from our folks coming in and out for WI events. And so that's where the communities really have to be organized. That's what we're hoping with the bid process. That's how Everett got baseball this year, is their leadership in their community. They bid on volleyball, and the Yakima bid was better. And so they learned from that, and they put together a more competitive bid, and no one could beat that for that level of baseball. So we went there, and I would guess that the restaurants and hotels around the stadium did much better on that Friday and Saturday than if we wouldn't have been there. So that's the reality of what happens there. You know, you don't think about that really from high school sports. But when Spokane's telling us $5 million come in their community from one basketball tournament, that's pretty significant.
He is Mick Hoffman. He is the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. Comes here every Tuesday to the just about every Tuesday. Wink, wink. But we are on, and we have these conversations Tuesday afternoon. Thank you so much, Mick, for coming down to the historic Columbia City Theater, where we have these conversations on your community radio station, our community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world, where we have the ability, if you like sports, we have sports, and we certainly do a lot of high school sports. But if you like world music, we have world music. If you like politics, oh boy, we are going to have a summer of politics. I'm sure Tony Benton is putting together, Tony B, as he's known on this station, is putting together the races, and he is putting together a number of the different candidates forums. And I tell you, I've had an opportunity, as many of you know, I've run for office a couple times, and I know that there are a lot of candidates who are burning up my phone and talking about their campaigns. There will be a lot of political conversations with several, I want to say up to 7 Seattle City Council districts, but also Renton and some of the surrounding communities where we have a large presence on Rainier Avenue Radio. There will be debates, there will be conversations, and yes, I may even host a couple of those if Tony can talk me into it. We'll see what my wife allows me to do this summer, and she probably will have me painting bedrooms. Mick, what can we do to promote the people of color into positions in athletics, especially at the administrative level? And I know that there are a number of very, very successful coaches right now, but when I go to some of the administrative meetings, I don't see a lot of people of color. And I'm just wondering, what can we do to increase opportunities for people who want to build a career in sports, to get them the foundation to maybe someday run the state organization or some of the district organizations?
Yeah, one, we have to change the model of access to the opportunities to get the experience. And so, we're doing that right now. As we talked about, we have a huge loss with BJ moving to Renton Schools as their district athletic director.
It's a huge loss.
And we are adding, so instead of replacing at that executive level, not that people of color can't do the work, it's just that that's typically somebody coming out of the AD ranks. And like you said, we have low representation currently. So we're creating a director level, shifting some work around, and this will give the opportunity for a wider applicant pool for somebody to be able to come in, get some experience, and then move to those positions. So that's our goal, but it all comes down to intentionality. We all talk about it. And so some of the things we're doing, we partner with Yakima Nation and the Legacy Hotel and Casino over there. They give us a very generous grant. I'm going over to meet with them on Thursday. And what we did with that is Albertus Brooks Jr., who was formerly of Seattle Schools and the Seattle Boys School for Boys. We funded scholarships for coaches who are interested in the Athletic Director Association, for professional development classes that are available through the NIAAA, to give them an opportunity to get the same credentials that others to catch up. And we're finding that 2 years ago at that conference, there were 4 attendees that were identified as people of color. This year we had 26. And so, that's 26 still isn't a lot, but that's 5 times, 6 times more than what we had before. That's a pretty significant increase. So we just have to keep finding ways and give opportunities. And again, it's not charity, it's not lessening, it's just thinking about this. If we do it the way we've always done it, we're going to keep getting the same results, right? So there's something about insanity with that. And so we have to find a way, and we have to be intentional to go out and meet and greet and identify and welcome people and support them when we get them into positions. So, we're trying to do that. I know the State Athletic Directors Association is working on doing that. I know the Principals Association is working on that. So we're trying to work together to identify people who are interested and then help them grow into those positions.
You mentioned intentionality. I think that is such a critical aspect of it. With also just the perception of leadership.
Yeah.
And it's still seems just a little bit in terms of what people perceive as a leader and what has to be presented by a person of color to be in those positions. Yeah. And you mentioned the intentionality. Is there opportunities for diversity training? Are there different things that we're doing at the athletic level to make sure that people are, when they see a person, that they see this as a potential leader and a person who could run a district?
Oh, absolutely. When I came into the job, Pat McCarthy, who runs athletics for Seattle Schools, he was chairing a diversity committee for us as a board member. And he said, Mick, we have to do better. Like, I'm not sure why this isn't going. What can we do? Well, that's not a path I've walked, right? And so I had to go out and find people who could help. And we created a very vibrant DEI committee, and for them to give us input on what we can do, and then to hopefully be able to make our association a place somebody wants to work, and that we can draw people in to help and grow it internally. So yeah, I mean, as a young person, I'm looking at this picture over here, and I'm gonna ask Tony B at the end where they at, because I'm watching these expressions of intense, like some of them look almost shocked. I don't know if it's a concert or if it's a public speaker or what it is, but when you see people that you can relate to doing things, it gives you the hope that you can do it as well and grow into those kind of roles. And I think that's going to your question. That's critical, that we find people who want to do that. Nothing we do is so complicated that most can't figure it out. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. So
I think those kids are looking at Daniel Bellis and Fresh Juice on a big screen at some point. Fresh Juice. And for those that like Fresh Juice, and I think that those kids are like, wow, that's Daniel B up there. Our man Daniel Bellis, who is the producer that we could not live without here at Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Mick Hoffman, the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association, tackling some of the major challenges that we always would discuss at the end of the year. Just appreciate him coming down. Mick, one more question before we go to break, and this is something that was brought to my attention by a number of my good friends who discussed the private schools versus the public schools. There seems to be a growing disparity of the haves versus the have-nots, and after the pandemic, a lot of people have moved their kids into to private schools for reasons that they had in regards to access to education and how the schools were being run after the pandemic. I'm a Catholic school kid, and I tell you, if you would have told me 40 years ago the price of Catholic schools now, I probably would have said, whoa, I'm going to pay that much. But nevertheless, as I told my son, I'm not going to be the generation that breaks that, but that's something that's personal to me. The schools in our community, my son had an opportunity to look at attending Garfield High School or Franklin High School, two schools that are close to my heart. My mother attended Garfield. I've coached football at Franklin, but O'Day went out because of the personal relationship and my experience there a long time ago. But having said that, there are people who feel, even in some of the public school ranks, Mick, that some of the schools in these wealthier public school neighborhoods, even this is separating the gap with kids who are coming to compete in athletics and activities. And I'm wondering your thoughts on that in regards to the public school versus private school debate and the high-end public school debate.
Yeah, trying to keep competitive equity is tricky because people measure in different ways. Some measure it in state championships, some measure it in just competitive games during the year. Mike started a long time ago, the association keeping data. And, I think this year we're at 18% private schools. We've been right around 17 or 17.3. So there's a little uptick, a few more private schools coming online, and they've won exactly that percent of championships. There's different sports at different levels where there's, bigger impact. We keep trying to adjust our rules. I mean, students, especially in our state, they have a right to choose where they go to school. And so the schools are in competition for FTE. I think that's a good thing. And if schools aren't stepping it up, then they're going to lose FTE, which costs people their jobs. But they're going somewhere else, right? It's not like kids are disappearing. So, it's a challenge. I would say I had our first, during COVID, our first private school claim that a public school is recruiting their students. Because on the flip side of the private schools being able to draw from that 50-mile radius, the public schools can offer a running start, free college. And the private schools, they don't have that ability to do that, right? Because they're charging tuition, where the public schools are just turning that funding from the state over to the community college. And so, I think there's some balance there just with those types of opportunities. It's really a have and have not world. That's a bigger concern to me. And it's not that poor kids can't compete, right? We see that all the time. But where schools that have high free and reduced or high social services provided are still competitive. But the challenge is stability, right? Those students, those families are more unstable, so they're moving in and out. So it's harder to build that. Typically, you don't have a baseball team that's played since second grade play through 12th grade in those types of communities. So our classification system adjusts based on socioeconomics in an attempt to do that. So we're finishing up our first cycle of that. We're reviewing data to see how effective it is.
When we come back, we'll delve a little bit more into that, and we'll also have some additional questions in regards to the role of select sports and select parents and how we recruit more referees on your community radio station, WIAA Primetime on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. We'll see you in about 3 minutes.
Rainier Avenue Radio.
Celebrate Make Music Day, Seattle on Wednesday, June 21st from Pier 62 at the Waterfront Main Stage from noon to 6 p.m. Performances include Uriah, Markel from The Circle, The Ancient Robots, Testarossa, and there will be a special performance by Rainier Avenue Radio staff. All performances are free. If you can't make it down, watch and listen live all day on RainierAvenueRadio.world. Make Music Day Seattle broadcasting live on RainierAvenueRadio.world, Wednesday, June 21st from noon to 10 p.m.
Powered by the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle, King County Public Health, Friends of the Waterfront, and Shunpike.
Mga kaibigan, ito po si Kuya Bert Kawili.
And this is Miles Salvador from Australia.
And I'm Norb Kawili, also known as Norbcam.
Kung gusto niyo po ang latest news and events from the Philippines at the local Filipino community, PhilAm Radio po.
We play Filipino music and interview guests from all around the world.
And I'll keep you updated on the latest Seahawks and sports news.
Kaya always tune in PhilAm Radio every Tuesday, 1 to 2:30 p.m. Pacific Time on Rainier Avenue Radio.world.
And in YouTube and Facebook. Salamat po.
Celebrate Juneteenth with Atlantic Street Center. Atlantic Street Center is excited to have you join our annual Juneteenth celebration on Saturday, June 17th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. The event will be held on the plaza at the Rainier Beach Community Center, which is at the intersection of Rainier Avenue South and Henderson Street. Program highlights include the amazing vocals of Josephine Howe. There'll also be a special Black Wall Street presentation by Sequina Alexander, whose grandfather, James O. Goodwin, was the youngest entrepreneur on Black Wall Street and owned Tulsa's only Black newspaper. There'll also be the inaugural Legends Award, which will honor Larry Gossett, Eddie Wright Jr., Elmer, and Aaron Dixon. Free food and beverages will be provided for event participants, and if you can't make it, you can watch the entire celebration on RainierAvenueRadio.world. Saturday, June 17th at the Rainier Beach Plaza and live on Rainier Avenue Radio from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Celebrate Juneteenth with Atlantic Street Center.
Here with the Rainier Avenue Radio traffic update. You can listen to us in your car 24/7 anytime by downloading the free TuneIn app. Once you do, search Rainier Avenue Radio. And remember, do not curse out your fellow drivers. This has been your Rainier Avenue Radio traffic update.
I know, I always wonder how you remember all that stuff. What else did you run for? Okay.
Tremendous learning experience. I'll tell you that was
What surprised you the most about it?
how little people know about it.
Oh, yeah. That's so many people think. Oh,
We are back on Rainier Avenue Radio.world, and Mick Hoffman was just having a conversation. We were discussing my illustrious political campaign on your community radio station. Many of you may remember that I ran for the state legislature in 1998. I also ran for the Seattle School Board in 2001, and as I tell my wife, Sarah Teets Cotto, I am so glad that I lost both those elections as the way life has turned out. You're so disappointed in the moment, but man, am I glad that it turned out the way it did. And certainly, Mick, I will share with you on other occasions, but just the way that politics works, at least it worked for me. And to still be involved in so many community activities is just been a tremendous thing down here, not only in the south end of Seattle, but in communities throughout the region, and being able to participate in these issues. It's been a wonderful career. And like I said before, I haven't had the responsibilities of having to do everything that our public elected officials do. And no matter what side of the aisle that you are on, or no matter what you represent in politics, your voice is important. And we appreciate the work that our elected officials do. We appreciate the work that our school board members do, in particular, in terms of supporting our educational pursuits, and also our athletic and activity pursuits throughout the state of Washington. And in a couple of really big, important political years coming up, we hope that people pay attention to the issues going on in their community. We hope that you vote this year in the local elections, which are really important. And then obviously the general election next year, we hope that you'll see commercials and campaigns, that you'll be able to separate all that and make great decisions for your community. And that's my little segue into what we talk about here on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Make Music Seattle is coming up here. That is going to be on Wednesday, June the 21st. And that is going to be an exciting opportunity. Tony B and all of our personalities at the Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Obviously, we are so committed to music, and world music and local music, and so many different ways. I tell you, Mick, my mother, who is down at her senior home, she was struggling so much, and we brought her an Amazon Alexa. And I tell you what, just having the ability to listen to all the music that she loves, going back to Mario Lanza and the Motown greats of the 1950s and 60s to the current music, and it's just really the healing power of music. And it's just so great to know that Tony B and the staff here have been so committed to music. So Make Music Seattle 2023, it's an event that once again, it will connect our neighbors and friends, and will also grow music in our community. And we're so excited that Rainier Avenue Radio will have a role in that. Also, it is Juneteenth coming up. Juneteenth is always such a very important time. How about a couple of events, excuse me, that we will be working on that day? That is going to be June 17th. And Daniel has got those posted right there. So there's going to be one out at the Atlantic Street Center at Rainier Beach. I believe that's going to be in the morning. And then the other event in the afternoon. So please, if you are looking for opportunities to celebrate Juneteenth and the history and the importance of those events that galvanize and connect in the African-American community, please, in this month of pride and celebration, and Pride Month here, Juneteenth also has a very, very important role, and we hope that people will pay attention to that and be a part of it. And so now let's go back to our guest, Mick Hoffman, the executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association. You have a little desk up here so I can continue to shape my notes and everything. Mick, the role of select sports, and this ties into the element that we were just talking about before a break in regards to the private schools and the Catholic schools, and certainly having the means for these kids to participate in athletics outside of high school, and you have these select programs that are advertising. And I saw back in the spring a football game, I believe a team that was put together by Ford Sports. They took on a team that came up from Hawaii, and I'm sure that was not sanctioned by the WIAA. However, a number of kids who will be participating in the WIAA, including a very, very prominent quarterback, were all playing in that game. And I don't know if the high school coaches were shaking their heads at this. And the team from Washington ended up winning. And I hope there were no injuries in that game, none that I heard of. But this whole thing, how are we going to continue to make the role of select sports and high school sports exist? And what happens when we have games like this, quote unquote, out of season game? You know, how does the role of the WIAA, how do we coexist, and how do we sanction these things?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't foresee us ever sanctioning, you know, contact football outside the season. Just one, the physical development and that with the students. You know, I think select sports have a place. They take care of that elite athlete. Our concern is it exclusionary to only the very, very best or those that can afford to pay, because none of that stuff's free. But the bigger concern is how they're being operated. You know, we have a sports medicine advisory committee, Dr. John Dresner and others, who, you know, they were authors of they worked for the Seahawks and the Huskies, and they authored the concussion protocols in the state. Those are the people that we work with to come up with our guidelines and rules. And yeah, people may want to play more and do things differently. The reason we do it that way is that's what the medical professionals are. And club sports are the largest unregulated business in the United States. And you know, $100 billion, whatever the estimate is now. You know, that's the concern, is the health and safety, because kids want to play, and we try to give them that opportunity. And, you know, we've done with basketball. There's a high school football league that's now starting to form. I think the owner of the USFL, and he wants to run an elite league in the spring. And so if those students are playing 8 or 10 full contact games, are they, you know, how much are they conditioning their bodies before they play, and then turn around and play in the fall? Is that good for a kid, or do they end up choosing? And maybe at some point, like we're seeing in basketball, some of those, you know, that top 0.001% of kids, they peel off because they're probably going to be playing on TV in the league someday. Maybe that's what's better for them. And then the other 99.999 come back and do, you know, sanctioned activities with the high school associations. So I think it's a big unknown. My only caution to parents out there is just make sure it's, you know, kids are healthy and safe, and that there's insurance. And if something happens that shouldn't happen, you know, coaches are trained. You see it in the paper. I mean, we still have coaches that are coaching at some of our high schools that do foolish things. They, you know, prey on kids. But there's a lot of effort, and of the tens of thousands of coaches, there's very little of that happening. In an unregulated setting, my concern with that could happen more often. So, you know, it's really, parents just need to pay attention and not be so glazed over by the promises of what this could lead to, but really look at how this is impacting their student right now, and when is too much too much.
I was just going to say, I mean, that would be the operative question, especially for football.
Yeah.
And it seems like we're starting to approach uncharted waters. There was always football in the fall, and then you play the other sports. And yeah, I mean, with the physical contact football as compared to basketball became a year-round sport many years ago. Baseball, there's now fall baseball, and then there's all sorts of winter conditioning. But then again, leading into the discussion of the physical nature of the games, completely different than that particular sport. Has there been any research done or conducted about playing, you know, a full, complete high school season, then in the spring playing games, and then coming back in the fall playing games?
Yeah. There's no real data on it because it hasn't happened, right? Now we're just now really seeing it. And with what we allow in spring football is pretty limited as well, because that's the advice from the Sports Medicine Advisory Committee. There's a national one of the best doctors from the universities around the country. And then in our own state, we bring the best within the state into the office. So, that it's a real concern of any contact sport. And 7-on-7 football is pretty good. It's not so good for the linemen, but it's pretty good for everybody else. And it's very concerning to hear those kinds of things are happening, especially sometimes we hear these events being run at sites that are jumping the fence, and we don't know what the quality of the field or where's the equipment coming from, and I don't know. It's just there's a lot of risks, there are a lot of unknown. Hopefully it works out. We get the data and they're unsubstantiated. I don't see it as a threat to high school football. People are going to show up on Friday nights because it's a community event.
There's that aspect of it, obviously, the community aspect of it, the school aspect of it, the traditional aspect of it, giving people the opportunity. I always said that football was great this Friday night. It brings the community together. People are going to meet future husband and wives are going to meet at high school football games, which is such an exciting component to it. However, you and I both know there are parents who think that this is an opportunity for their kids to be recruited to participate in college athletics. As a coach, I always felt it was my responsibility, and the Highline parents knew this, that if you wanted a scholarship, it's a needed scholarship, and it would help if you actually open up a book. And I talked to a number of young men about that whose GPAs were hovering around the 1.9 GPA line. So you're going to look way more attractive if you have a 3.25 GPA. And that requires a little bit of work at night, and also some parent conversations in that. And then those are tough conversations to have with 14 to 18-year-old guys. But I think that I was able to get my point across. How much is too much? In regards to this is the first I've heard of this in regards to an elite high school league in the spring. But we have football games that are going on after the state championship. I remember Eastside Catholic and Bothell have participated in some big football games against schools across the country, and these quote unquote national games. How much of this is just going a little bit too far?
That's a good question. And our state struggled for a long time allowing that go through the Geico is what they call it. But and our schools really wanted to do it, so we extended it. So that's why I don't begrudge people trying to provide more opportunity. I just hope that they're not doing it for the sake of getting adults connected to students to be their financial advisors and their agents down the road. That they're doing it really with best intent, and not at the expense of potential of students' health. And, is around right now in the fall, we allow 10 football games before we go to postseason. So there's some states that do 14, there's some that do 8. So we know there's a range. So it's not so much like, that's how our SMAC committee signed off on the Geico game essentially is, look, it's an extra week of practice. They do very low contact. We have rules for that. And then they go play a game. It's more the concern, you get conditioned to that contact and play, you have the winter off, hopefully they're working out, and then you go back out in the spring. And that was one of the concerns with spring football when it started. There's very strict guidelines on what's allowed and not allowed. A kid who's going to go to college, if you're a football team, if you're at a smaller school or a team that doesn't have a program that goes to a team camp, you can go to an individual camp. You will get, in today's world with social media, you're going to get found. If you're good enough, they're going to find you.
Going back to the recruiting aspect and the college aspect of this, which is critical for a lot of families, and they're making an investment in all these different camps, and obviously they would like to see a payoff on that, especially if the young person is doing well academically and is also what we quote unquote consider an elite athlete, because that's what's going to take to get recruited, obviously. Is there a way that, and I've heard this from the Coaches Association, from the Football Coaches Association, who at first they were trying to restrict everything, and they said we wanted a shorter season and we want to shorten spring football. And we want to shorten these activities. Now it seems like there's a movement where they kind of want to take it back and maybe expand. And has Andy and the group that is overseeing football, have they been looking at this with the coaches of maybe expanding the football and maybe allowing a football to start a little bit into the spring and going into that, rather than having these players who are going on to some of these elite programs in the communities?
Yeah, I mean, look at what happened to basketball, AAU basketball, and some of these, the Nike Summer League and Adidas Big Time. The recruiting process left the high school and it went to the AAU coaches. And football was trying, they're trying to put that toothpaste back in the tube right now, with what WIPCA and Nayland are doing with the June Scholastic event this weekend. In football, we actually had an amendment for 7-on-7 football to become a sanctioned sport in the spring. And the Coach Association, they were kind of mixed on it for the reasons you said. So guess what? Now there's a 7-on-7 league and it's outside the control of the schools and it's taking kids year round. And so it's, it's going to happen. It's just a matter, I struggle with this right now with our National Federation of High Schools. National tournaments are happening in one shape or form. Why wouldn't we control it so we can, if we're the ones with the medical experts working with us, and we have a streaming service where we can put it out there on there, there's nothing wrong with making revenue. The schools sell tickets and pay for their events. I make a living off of doing this with high school sports. I don't begrudge anybody for making money off of it. I just want to make sure it's being done thoughtfully and safely.
What if you're a student, or what if you have a athlete? My son enjoys playing football, which is kind of a surprise to me. He never showed any interest in it, but he absolutely loves the sport, and he's out there and he's got his helmet and he's out there trying to tackle somebody, trying to be somebody in the football field. And he also loves baseball. If we expand that, how are we going to make sure that the kids that want to play both sports and traditional, and when you and I were playing, I mean, it was 3 distinct seasons. Of course, they probably didn't want me out there in some of those games, but I hustled my way in. But for a kid who wants to play both sports, if he's playing baseball in the spring and the football coach wants him out there for the 7-on-7 league, is there a way that we can rationalize that, or is that something that's just going to have to balance itself out at each individual school?
Yeah, and that's where I say it's important for the schools to be controlling it, because now you have an athletic director, you have a head of school or principal, you have a superintendent who oversees those coaches, and the coaches can work it out. When I was coaching at Fort Vancouver High School, and I'd sit down with Jim Wilson, who was our baseball coach, and we would plot out our summer schedule for baseball and basketball. And we knew which kids were, good in either one, and be like, okay, how about if I have them for this weekend, you have them for this weekend? We go to the families and say, hey, we got your schedule for you. And they're like, thank you. Because now they didn't have to choose between us. And there are some times where a kid who was actually one of our best players, but he had a better chance to go to college in baseball, he hardly played any summer with us that year, because Jim told me, he goes, hey, Mick, this kid, he has a chance to be a Division I catcher. He's not going to be a Division I basketball player. So I said, great, I trust you. Take him, I want him at team camp. So he went to team camp with us. Other than that, he played, and guess what? He went to the University of San Francisco and played baseball. And so, but Jim and I were working together, and my job or salary wasn't dependent on having that kid play, and neither was his. We were doing it for the right reasons. And if our select coaches can do that same thing, great, because the last thing a coach, it doesn't matter whether it's a select coach or a school coach, you don't want to disappoint your coach. I mean, you think back, some of the most important people in your life are your coaches. And by nature, we want to please other people, and definitely coaches are people who want to be pleased. And so if the adults will work together, then the kids should be able to do anything they want.
This is Mick Hoffman, his executive director of the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association, on your community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. I'm Juan Cotto, longtime host and voice of Metro League and State Championship Baseball on Rainier Avenue Radio.world, and we will be looking forward to an awesome year in 2023. Starting next week, we have some events coming up for Juneteenth. We're going to be with the Atlantic Street Center, and that's going to be at Rainier Beach High School. And we will be discussing those activities and presenting those activities in the early afternoon hours. I think it's from 11 to 2. But certainly Juneteenth will have a very, very important and prominent role on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. If you're not able to attend those events, maybe just throw them on in the background and listen, because they're such an important community builder and such an important part of just making sure that we are contributing to the legacy of our communities here at Rainier Avenue Radio.world. So that's going to be Sunday, June 17th. Then next Wednesday, the 21st, we have Make Music Seattle 2023. And we will be making music, and we will be spreading the love of community music and on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. So that's going to be from noon to 6. That's sponsored by a number of different hosts, including the King County Government's Art Commission is a big sponsor of that, and several others as Daniel has put on that sheet. So please pay attention next Wednesday, Make Music Seattle Day. And we hope that your music in your heart will shine all throughout the community. And we will, of course, discuss that on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Mick, how do we keep all of this affordable? As a parent who has got a son in select baseball and going to a football camp this weekend, and also been in position where I've worked almost 30 years to be in a position to be able to afford it, I know that there's a lot of parents who work their tails off and they struggle to make ends meet, and their kids at a time where they desperately need leadership, they desperately need opportunities. Some of these things are getting so expensive they can't afford it. And who would ever think, after the way we were brought up, that you wouldn't be able to afford participation in athletics? What can we do to keep athletics affordable for these kids who desperately need these, not only the people and the relationships and the camaraderie, but all of the lessons that sports bring to them?
Yeah, I think the school side is pretty much there with House Bill 1660, putting some stipulation on schools and the funding that school districts give it. I think the other piece is where we haven't gotten to yet is going out and finding those partners in the communities, the Amazons, the Googles, to help with costs of out of season opportunities. So every school has the same opportunity to go to play summer league basketball or have their fast pitch team play, supplement uniforms. I know there's a lot of generous people in the community, and there's a lot of money in this community. I mean, this came out with $900 and some million on this new capital gains tax that's supposed to go to education. So our schools, I think, do a really, really good job. They see the value of it. It's the out of season opportunities that we need to find a way to provide it for all students that are interested, and not just the elite. And we need to take care of that elite athlete. I mean, they're fun to watch, that they have a career potential in this field. But at the same time, take care of that student that maybe will never get past JV softball, but that she gets an opportunity to do it. So I think we need to do a better job organizing our community allies, finding a way to centralize, fund that. We're looking at starting a business community. I'm a school teacher and I'm running a business. It would be great to have some experts sitting there at the table giving some advice to do the exact thing you're talking about.
Mick, what were the biggest lessons that you learned from coaching in your career as a coach? What were the things that you learned? What did coaching do to your soul, to your conscience, to your spirit?
Yeah, I would say it taught me to care about the person more than the outcome of a contest, to enjoy the journey and not let the scoreboard dictate success. Next weekend, we have an annual tradition with two of my players that live up here now, call it the summer solstice golf. And we're going to meet and play golf and laugh. And they're old enough now. Heck, we might even have an adult beverage while we play golf. Have dinner together.
Make sure they pay for it.
Yeah. Good luck. And so I think I owe them. So I think those are the biggest things. The other piece is not to take yourself too serious. Like, you don't have to identify with what you do. You identify with how you do it. And I was young. I was 28 years old when I got and back then, that was almost 30 years ago. That was young for a head coach. And so, I wasn't very confident, and that played out in the way I acted sometimes. And so I think that, have faith in the good in people and do it the right way. And the wins and losses, they take care of themselves along the way. So,
what were some of the lessons that you hoped your athletes that you had coached walked away with?
That if you work hard, it's rewarded, number one, and that there's a role for everybody in every situation. You just have to find one that satisfies you and that fits you. We all want to, I used to do basketball team when I was coaching basketball. If everybody plays 20 minutes and we got 12 of you, how many minutes is that? You do the math, divide between how many are in the game. It's like 5 times more minutes than are actually possible. If everybody averages 10 points, we're scoring 120 points a game. What's the chance of that? So, just a realistic view of the world. And again, enjoy the experience. Know what you want and need to get out of it. Anything else is gravy. You win trophies, gravy. You get to play in the state tournament, gravy. But you should enjoy going to practice every day with your buddies.
One last question, and then we will call it a show. The balance between Eastern Washington and Western Washington. I had some friends of mine that came over from Spokane a couple of weeks ago, and we were discussing the East Coast, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you guys rarely get over here." How do we balance off, and how do you and the WIAA and your talented team balance off the perceptions that we're out here lonely wilderness on the East Coast, while you folks that have the population and the venues, you pull us all over there? How do we balance that off?
Well, first of all, we show up over there quite a bit. We run a majority of our tournaments over there. You think about it, 2 or 3 basketball tournaments, which is really, football's great. That's 10,000 fans. Basketball is almost 90,000 fans or more every year, and 2 of the 3 tournaments are on the east side of the mountains. So we like to show up. We run a track tournament. One of our track meets are over there. So we run a ton of baseball, softball over there typically. So one, we show up and we pay attention to what's going on. And number 2 is we make ourselves available to them when they have wants and needs. So I'm going to be over on that side of the mountain twice in the next week and a half to go have meetings with groups and communities to work through different issues that they're having. So I think where you show up tells what's important.
And this is a man who shows up every Tuesday right here on Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Mick, I guess this is the end of our first academic year. So thank you so much for your work in getting over here. And I think we had a number of shows. Hopefully people will tune into some of those on our website to hear some of things that we had talked about during the year. But nevertheless, we appreciate your passion for athletics in the state of Washington. We appreciate your communication with us and just your sheer ability to come over here and do this on Tuesday. So thank you so much.
You bet. And I want to thank Tony B for the invite to start this process with me, and Daniel for the engineering and producing through the trials and tribulations we have. And I really want to thank you, Juan. You've made this really easy. I'll be honest, I was nervous. I'm like, I don't know, I'm not that interesting of a guy. I don't have that much to talk about or that I know. And I appreciate your genuine interest in what the WI does, and then to challenge the thinking about how we go about doing it. So this has been a great experience for me. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And Daniel, thank you so much for all you do for putting this on and working with us and the ability to juggle schedules and starting times and everything you do. So from all of us, and hey, it's not like this is a goodbye. Certainly you will see us, and we will make sure that we have our schedule for the summer. And obviously we'll be heading into the fall on your community radio station, our community radio station, Rainier Avenue Radio.world. Have a great summer, and we will catch up with you soon.